Audie Murphy was a staff sergeant E6 in southeastern France by October of 1944. Now, Audie had a theory about combat. He believed, do not stay situated in one place more than about 5 seconds, even if you're instructed to stay in one spot. So that's the main difference between being in the Army, and I can attest to this, and being in the Marines. When you're a Marine and you're told to do something, you take it to the letter. However, the Army sort of allows a person to be a little bit creative, you know, and Audie Murphy was creative. He was always on the move, side to side, back to back, always around. There was a lieutenant colonel named Michael Pollock at a fierce battle near Clery Quarry in southeastern France, a vital battle in World War II, as the Allied troops, remember this is October 1944, this is 4 months after D-Day. About 4 months, D-Day is June 6, 1944. The Allied troops had forced their way about 100 miles inland into France. But this was a key battle because the German army was gearing up and putting up their big assault to counterattack this invasion. The Battle of Clery Quarry was one of these significant battles, and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Pollock was surrounded by sniper fire. All of a sudden, from out of nowhere, was this little guy from Kingston, by way of Celeste, by way of Farmersville, Texas, who was bouncing around, all 5 feet 5.5 inches of him, which could not really be seen by those big Germans, and he saved this lieutenant colonel's life. He killed 4 snipers, wounded 3 others, and ran an entire squadron of troops, German Nazi troops, out of there. Michael Pollock said, you know what, I commend you to become an officer. You need to have a battlefield commission as an officer. Audie Murphy said, sir, I appreciate it, but I only have a 5th grade education. I don't have the education to do the paperwork and the necessary mental preparation that's required to become an officer. Thank you, but no thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Pollock wouldn't have any of it. He says, no, sir, you will be a 2nd lieutenant. And so it was. A non-commissioned officer became a 2nd lieutenant, Audie Leon Murphy. Then about 2 weeks later, while working on point, on patrol, Audie Murphy was wounded. It was the 2nd time that he would have been wounded. He would be wounded again, but he was sent to a hospital. He returned to his troops on January 14th as they had begun to advance northward into France. Write that down. The songwriter left, okay. Advance northward into France. Okay.
That's another one.
We're still in France?
But it's right now, it's tough to get out of France.
Okay.
It's really tough to get out of France, yeah. It's muddy and there's bodies all over the place. It's hard to get out of France right now, Bob. Now, there was a certain strategic position in France, a little town called Holzwihr, right next to the Reedweir forests, surrounded on the east side by the Rhine River, and on the western side by the Vosges Mountains. That's spelled V-O-S-G-E-S. The French word is Vosges. Now I know 2 words in French, Vosges and This is the January the 14th. Lieutenant Audie Murphy returned as company commander of Company B, the 1st Battalion, the 5th Infantry Regiment of the 3rd Infantry Division. And their job was to hold the eastern boundary of this Reedweir forest. There was a road that left Holzwihr going to the north. The troops were advancing down. Now the Germans in those days had a very awesome weapon known as a Tiger tank. It was almost impenetrable. Impenetrable. You remember the smoke off that cigar, Doris? Impenetrable. Yeah. Impenetrable. The cigar not slowed it down.
And Lee, you don't drink, do you?
No. You see that Navy little baseball cap with the NY on it? That stands for not yet. Never been a history lesson like this ever. Anyway, on the 25th of January, the temperature was 10 degrees below zero during the heat of the day. There were 6 Mark 6 Tiger tanks getting ready to spearhead a movement which would have infantry behind them. Several companies of Nazi infantry. Audie Murphy's company was in bad shape. A company ordinarily is about 50 people. Company B of the 1st Battalion of the 15th Infantry Regiment of the 3rd Infantry Division only had about 20 people. Audie Murphy was in charge. As on January the 25th, the tanks came rolling down the road on the way to Holtzwehr. 2 anti-tank destroyers were perched on this little road. One about 50 yards right close to the wooded area, the perimeter of the wooded area. Another one about a half a football field back up on the other side of the road. As the tanks approached, everybody opened fire. Now our tanks, the United States tanks, had 75 millimeter shells, which just bounced off the steel of these Tiger tanks. Meanwhile, they were ripping loose an 88 millimeter shell, and the tank that was closest to the woods was destroyed immediately. Half the people inside the tank were killed, the other people escaped and ran into the woods as it smoldered fire. The tank that was ahead a little bit, it was trying to maneuver itself on the icy road, and suddenly it slipped into a culvert, a kind of a drainage ditch. It was about 3 feet into the ground, and because it slipped into this ditch, the weaponry on the tank, the anti-tank weaponry, was not in the proper position. It was totally ineffective. So, scratched 2 tanks. Audie Murphy said, "Okay, men, retreat back to the woods. We're in trouble." Audie Murphy, always on the move, he would fire 2 or 3 shots from his carbine. He would retreat, fire 2 or 3 more, till he got about on the same parallel with the original Tiger tank, the original United States tank that was smoldering and on fire. He told his men, he commanded his men, go back into the woods, secure yourself. Audie Murphy at this time decided to take a bold risk, probably the last moment of his life.